life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. You're listening to Racially Speaking, where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. Of course, I'm your host, David Phipps. Also joining me, the social justice cowboy himself, Wyatt John Mark Walker. What's going on, my guy?
What's up, everyone? What's up, man? How you doing?
Man, I'm going.
You too. You're still up?
As
still
usual,
standing?
Yeah, as usual, we're burning the I'll say the midnight oil. It's close enough.
Yeah, it is close enough.
And for those of you that don't know, I think most of you guys probably do. My wife and I just had our third little baby about a month ago yesterday. However, he decided to come 3.5 weeks early. So it's been a time. And John Mark, John Mark, I know we've talked about doing this, but I think we'll do an episode down the road when we get to it on a little more of our feelings.
Our babies on the pods? Is it? Oh, no.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, feelings. Not have our babies.
That'd be much more lighthearted. That'd be much more lighthearted.
Just got to get them to make noise on command.
We should start with your toddlers at least and then work our way down.
Yeah. Well, they can
I've had
talk.
Ollie on.
I mean, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, they can talk.
We should have both on.
They're just chat. But we should have our non English speaking babies on because they just
that'd be great
and cry and make noises.
We really should have our older kids on and just see what happens.
That'd be wild. We could do that.
In fact,
we could do that.
This episode would have been a great one to have them on.
It's true. You want me to go wake them up right now? That might be one of those episodes that never gets aired.
Yeah,
it's just for us.
That's the beauty of the podcast. It's not live, so you know we're playing with house money.
There we are.
Now, I was going to go on a more serious note though before you said that and say there's nothing like seeing a life or being part of bringing a new life. That was a weird way to say it, but into the world. It's beautiful. It's hopeful and amazing. And all that. But yeah, like I said, mentioning, our Everett is our newest one's name, but everything that went into that and the year that many of you know, I've shared a little bit on here, but just a tough couple years. We've had a few miscarriages, and my wife's, she's dealt with a lot of health issues, and then in the end, her health was the one that was a lot more in jeopardy than the baby is just out of nowhere. And so all that's traumatic, man. And I know
it is.
you can relate in some much bigger ways with trauma and loss and how it's all interconnected. I know we talked about doing an episode on the connection of this kind of trauma with even other topics we talk about on here. So that's a little
and I don't think I've even told you this, but your most recent birth experience is similar to mine and my wife's 3 weeks early C-section. So we have some of that. Like that was it weighs on you differently. Like ours was planned. It wasn't as last minute, but ours was planned. But it still was. There was some nervousness, some fears that came out. So we can talk through it personally, but we could also talk through it on the mic. So
absolutely, we'll love obviously to do the former, but I think it could be some value to the more I share even a tidbit of what we've gone through, the more I hear other people's similar stories, as I know you and Meg can relate to. So it's all all interconnected, but all things considered, we're doing well. Baby being early, I don't know if you can relate to this too. Seems to sleep way more
that's good.
than our other two, so that's been great.
That's great.
Just get cute baby holding time, so I can't complain about that whatsoever.
No.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Yeah. So a lot's happened. since we've been on the mic together. The Grammys. Okay. So 50
Oscars,
years. No, I mean the Grammys.
Oh, Grammys. Okay.
50 years of hip hop. We haven't talked about that. Did you watch the Grammys? Are you aware
I didn't watch any of the
that
Grammys.
Happening? Yeah,
I did.
I did a little bit.
I heard shocking little about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I was on there to see Beyonce win album of the year for Renaissance, but she lost it to Harry Styles.
You're disappointed.
I was mad about that. And I love that album too, Harry's House. But so I went back and listened to it the next day because I was like, come on, it's not better than Beyonce's album. It's really good. I see why it won. It has better appeal, for better broad-ranging appeal. So I see why it won. But I wasn't expecting the tribute to 50 years of hip hop and seeing they had 33 artists come up on stage and perform just a snippet of their song. Definitely worth, if you're a hip hop fan, it's definitely worth watching on YouTube. Okay. Go find it. But it was like one of those mashups from like 2009. You remember how we used to have those mashups? It was like one of those, but live with 33 different performers. So it was just awesome to see the tribute to hip hop and that little slice of Black community, Black culture up on stage celebrated. So that was cool.
That's crazy.
But what you thought I was going to ask about was Everything Everywhere All at Once. What do you think about? How do you feel about that movie winning? It was like, what was it, like 10, 9?
They won. I think. So I didn't watch the Grammys. We did watch the Oscars. We like award shows. I don't know why we didn't watch the Grammys, but I love watching award shows. And I mean, we literally have rarely seen most of the movies that are nominated for Oscars. So I literally just like watching people get awards. I don't know what that says about me. I just think it's fun. It's a fun atmosphere.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't seen everything. What is it?
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
All at once. I always mess it up. Haven't seen it. I definitely plan to see it. I love Michelle Yeoh. I just haven't gotten around to seeing it.
She did great.
I do think I'm pretty sure it won all the big ones that it was nominated
for. Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Support. And then it was like nominated for a second Best Supporting Actress, and then Best Original Score and Best Costume. Those were all nominations. So it won 7 of the 10 that it was nominated for. So I mean, they swept. So I saw it on a plane. I was headed to Austin for a work conference. And I saw it on the plane, and it was great. I enjoyed watching it on the plane, but it's like a plane viewing experience. So, I wasn't like, I was squeezed in tight next to somebody who didn't want to touch them, and the sun was shining on my right side. So I didn't have the best viewing experience. So I got to watch it again, and I have to get through more than half of it this time. So, So
mainly that part.
Yeah. I'm just so happy for them that they won. And what that means for actors of Asian descent that these awards have gone for this movie that was about an Asian family. So, I'm excited about it.
Is it, again, full disclosure, I haven't seen it either, so we'll save the pod episode for later down the road. But on the Oscars thing, we can go here for a second. Do you think that actually, first, yes, I think it's amazing that it won all those awards. Great for the Asian community, especially Michelle Yeoh. She's amazing. I love that she got her flowers. Her speech was beautiful, I thought. Inspirational for the most part. And but yeah, I want to see it. I was going to ask you first. Caitlin doesn't do like anything scary, like anything close to horror. Is it scary at all?
No, it's action. It's action packed.
Action,
it's not
like sci-fi-ish.
Yeah, sci-fi-ish.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I can get her to do that then.
That's all I can say though before you watch it. I was not expecting it to. I mean, nobody was expecting it to be what it was. So
yeah, I can't even tell what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So you got to watch it. Yeah, but as far as I got into it, it wasn't scary. It didn't have that tone at all. So
okay.
She should be safe.
The other thing, let's have a preliminary discussion, and then once we see it, we'll have a after the fact discussion. But the big debate as far as like, you know, racially speaking, I'll say, like, that I've heard out there is, do you think that Jamie Lee Curtis should have beat out Angela Bassett for that supporting actress
that's a good question.
Oscar? Because I saw, you know, a bunch of back and forth about people, you know, celebrating Everything Everywhere All at Once, but then we're really mad that Angela Bassett got beat out by Jamie Lee Curtis. So obviously we've talked about Angela Bassett specifically and Black Panther. Wakanda Forever. Yeah. Loved her performance. Very, very, very powerful.
She did an amazing job. Deserves that nomination. Jamie Lee Curtis did an amazing job acting too. So
okay, I mean, I figured. I just you know, I haven't seen it.
I mean, you gotta see it. She did an amazing job. Stephanie Hsu, who is also in Everything Everywhere All at Once, also was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So we can talk more about that. But I think Jamie Lee Curtis deserves it. Everyone who's nominated deserves it, right? You're not nominated if you don't deserve it. Right. So I don't know how to say which one is better, but I think she's worthy to have received that. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, I thought of a brilliant segue into this next section. So I'm on a little bit of paternity leave, so we're at home kind of nonstop, especially at nighttime, just watching TV, catching up on things that people have been recommending to us. So we started Abbott Elementary. You like that segue into the education? Man,
love Abbott.
I got to be honest. I'm gonna give it another shot. We did 3 episodes. During the 3rd one, I dozed off. I did not love it.
Baby fog. It's your baby brain fog. Okay. That's the problem. Yeah.
I almost felt guilty because you're not the only one that's recommended it, but I was not I was not in it.
You don't have to love it. Not everybody loves the same stuff.
I don't know what it was, but I think objectively enough people I don't know and do know like have recommended it. So I'm like, this has got to be amazing.
We watch it every week, but it's okay. You don't have to love it. But
no, I'm going to give it another shot.
The segue is into education. We're going to talk about education.
Yes, education. Yeah. I'm going to bring up Abbott Elementary again. Well, I like that we're at the Oscars because I'll do it now. I'll say we got to be careful not to. I want to interconnect some of the stuff, not to just celebrate representation. I think, at the expense of sidestepping real issues. So what I'm thinking is Abbott Elementary specifically has gotten so much buzz and, rightfully so. I think it is objectively probably really good. I'm not trying to hate on it by any means. And then there's just so much more representation at like the Oscars, the Grammys, all these big stages in entertainment that we've been talking about. Even in places maybe where they've done a really terrible job, there's still representation, at least at face value. Dare I say the NFL, the halftime show, stuff like that even. But I think that can sometimes be a smokescreen to other stuff that's going on in reality. And that's where we're at right now. 20 minutes in with education, what is happening. And we're going to discuss kind of what's going on. So you've got what's happening, Abbott Elementary, fictional, amazing show. And then currently, as we're recording, a lot of stuff is happening in mainly Florida. Virginia's involved a little bit, Texas, of course. But of course, on here, we've talked about, and we wanted to come back to this because we've touched on some of these things in past episodes. But in the state of Florida, earlier last year, Florida legislation proposed something called the Individual Freedom Act, which was also dubbed the Stop Woke Act, essentially attempting to, they put it into law, but then I just read that the federal court or government nixed it. I don't know if that means it's done. But anyway, the Stop Woke Act, Individual Freedom Act, was essentially to make it impossible for people, mainly white people specifically, to feel uncomfortable in school, and in workplace settings. So
yeah, I remember
essentially
that.
They wanted to stay away from anything that would, I think we laughed about it on the episode because it's so subjective. But
it is.
Essentially it was, we don't want any white people to feel uncomfortable learning about something that their ancestors are responsible for. Like slavery or segregation. You can throw out a ton of different things. And so talked about how dangerous that being legislation could be to just education overall. Let's see. They were trying to ban, really, in a lot of ways, affirmative action initiatives. They were trying to ban DEI training.
Yep.
Which we could even talk right there about how I see that as a huge deal, but a huge deal because of how small a deal it is, in my opinion, because I work at a public institution. So taking like those occasional DEI certification or like things online that are just like a checkbox thing are so like low stakes and so basic.
Yeah.
I don't mean for that to even sound condescending, but they're so like
they are basic,
not offensive.
Shelf. Yeah.
Yeah. To cancel those because they make people feel too uncomfortable or are pushing too far an agenda is just
Okay, so I'll say this, that those are like the professionally done, required by your job ones, right? That we're talking about that are like low stakes, like it's pretty simple, talking about race, culture, and ethnicity, defining those terms, how do they interact, everybody has a culture, like base level stuff, right? But so what I think people are reacting to so strongly when they're against DEI trainings are some of the things that have gone awry, right? So when people start to I'll probably get into some anecdotal stories now, but I remember seeing a picture of a white man and his young teenage son, so early teenage son, wearing chains, trying to replicate the experience that a slave might have had. So trying to get into that as part of some cultural DEI training, right? So that's a really weird thing to do, right? That's who is that helping? Why are you doing that? It's probably causing some stress and triggering turmoil for some people too, who are viewing that. So what's the purpose behind that? That's weird to me. Or I know this one training where like people throw this term around, and I don't want to use this. I hesitate to even say it, but like woke Olympics, like how oppressed are you type of training going around. And I have a friend who's a Black woman, and she was going through a training like that in college, and she it was like she was overlooked, like she didn't have enough boxes to check to say, oh yes, this is my identity. And so there are some things, like even some privilege walks. I also had one friend who went through a training. Walk. Yeah, privilege walk. You know what I'm talking about. Like the result of that, you ask a lot of questions, like who came from a home where two parents are present. Okay, you take a step forward, and you begin to see some of the advantages you had in life. And there's merit to that. Like I actually liked that training, but it all depends on the follow-up. What happens after? What's the conversation after? Where do people go with this information after they've had this experience? And that's where I think these trainings can go awry often. Yeah. So I see some of these as someone who does these trainings.
Yeah.
I see why people respond so strongly to want to stop it all, to throw it all out. But they're responding to the few that are bad, right? So that's what I'm thinking. The standouts that are problematic. Like there's one assessment that I'm qualified to administer, and I know the training that we're told, it just identifies where you are in your cultural identity, in your journey. It identifies where you are in your ability to interact in meaningful ways cross-culturally. And you're not supposed to like take that and be like, you're bad. It's just where you are, right? It's just an assessment. And this company took my friend's test and put him and everyone else who tested wherever he was in some type of remedial training program based on the result of this program that I'm qualified to administer. And I was like, that is the opposite of what they teach us to do, right? They don't tell us to take whoever scored worse. It's not a scoring scale like that. It's just where you are. So I've heard about this going bad often. So I can understand a little bit why people are wanting to go after it. But I think they're going after it in extreme ways that is overall harmful, right? They're trying to cut it all out completely. And that just leaves us back where we were when America, quote unquote, was great, right? Where we weren't talking about these things, and racism was just blatant and rampant. The only way we were talking about race was to oppress people, right? So we can't go back to that. And we can't have these messed up trainings. We have to do something. And that's what I would say this. I don't think the people who are writing policies to cancel all DEI trainings are genuine about caring about people feeling uncomfortable, or genuine about learning about history, or genuine about having progress together in the future. They're not genuine about unity, because if they were, then they would want to reform these trainings and help them succeed rather than just cancel them altogether. Yeah.
I just have trouble with the vilifying of anybody, but the DEI administrations and administrators and just initiatives. I just think it's so disingenuous I think you might be a little more charitable than I am. Like I understand what you're saying with the individual people giving a bad name, the people that are extreme, the guy in chains and stuff trying to, get worked up.
Those are extreme anecdotes, right? They're anecdotes. Yeah, they're extreme. Yeah.
But I can't get around the fact that, the collective response is just rooted in being uncomfortable because you're starting to lose majority culture. You're getting pushback on what as the way, and it's majority in power. Like it's a power struggle at its basic level. And I think that's where the pushback is ultimately coming from, with some outliers for sure. But I just think that people who are starting to be affected in a way of realizing, oh man, I did get this because of, potentially privilege. And again, I'm not saying we should demonize anybody because of that, but I just think, like, even what you're saying, even doing your administration without, even before, like you said, the follow-up, couldn't people, that's got to feel uncomfortable, like, in general.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're taking it. So that's what I'm saying. It's just, it's the coming back to, you made the joke about the, getting back to being America being great again type thing. And I get that's a joke, but what I don't think can be lost is understanding the narratives, whether historical or not, that we're running more parallel to than not. And so, like, what I read about the individual freedom, one thing I read about the Individual Freedom Act or anti-woke bill or act, is that, and I've heard this from teachers as well, it's not that they're not going to be able necessarily to not teach about slavery and segregation and oppression and stuff like that. Like, they'll teach that stuff, but they're concentrating on framing it as not that being positive, but they're going to highlight the people that fought against it and highlight that, which I kind of think they already do, based on what I remember and seeing what my 7-year-old's already coming home with. Yeah. I don't think it's egregiously bad yet, but even, he'll come home and he's learning about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and this stuff. And there's all there is
those great abolitionists, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, positive.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he didn't do anything positive, but, like, at no point, I'm sure they going to learn about them owning slaves and the actual real history. And so I just think there is to have a act put into place where it's going to be illegal to teach otherwise, I think can be really dangerous. And it runs too parallel to slavery. I'm not calling this slavery, but I'm saying it runs too parallel to that same sentiment of depriving people of education to pat the people in power on the back and to protect their power and freedom to control everything else. At our church, we just did a justice series, and everyone did a fantastic job who preached. And my friend, Miss Tammy Franklin, shout out to her, just preached this past Sunday. Did like two people preached, and she was one of them. They did a dual sermon together. Anyway, she mentioned she preached on Harriet Tubman, and then preached on the slave Bible, which many of you might not be listeners familiar with, but essentially, the slave Bible was the version of the Bible that had things cut out of it that had anything to do with
that
oppression by leaders and whatnot, literally depriving them
that had to be
education.
A pretty thin Bible. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
The entire book of Exodus is cut out. Now all of a sudden it was just a David. Right. That had to be a very thin Bible. Yeah.
So depriving oppressed people of the truth. I just think that it's running too parallel to something like that. Some of you might think that's dramatic. That's okay. But
no. Yeah. I agree. If I may, I agree. You can tie it to slavery and not educating the slaves. You could also tie it to Reconstruction and the rewriting of history after the Civil War. Well, I guess that would be with redemption. Reconstruction happened and things were headed in a good direction. Redemption happened, and then that's how we get our textbooks that I don't want to say whitewash, but that is the term for it. Not white as in race, but whitewash history and remove some of those negative things about race and the abuse of people, racism, right? So that's what's happening too. And it also happened in it's propaganda, right? We have a history book that isn't free of propaganda, and especially American propaganda. We have curriculums like that have been written with the purpose of highlighting the positive sides of our founders and the founding of our nation, but not addressing some of the hypocrisy where they were fighting for freedom, but keeping people in chains too. And that is uncomfortable. And so the funny thing is, though, I hear people who are who are on the side of auditing history classes talk about how this generation isn't able to handle tough things, right? Where the phrase snowflake or coddling of the American mind, right? We're not able to handle hard subjects. And if we're going to cut this out too, if we're going to audit out all of this hard truth about racism and history and slavery and oppression of Asians in America or Native Americans especially, right? We forget them completely. If we're going to audit all of that out, we're coddling the minds of our youth. They're not able to hold the good with the bad in the founding of our country, right? Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, those guys, I mean, listen to Hamilton. They did some stuff, right? They established a country, right? And yet they oppressed lots of people groups, right? I'm not trying to cancel them for that. So we can look at both sides, right? So it feels weak. It feels, it feels weak. It feels like they're afraid of the past or afraid of if they say something was wrong, then that means everything is wrong. It feels immature. So,
yeah. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I watched the halftime show.
Okay, so
I watched the Rihanna concert. I didn't watch the football surrounding it so much.
Right. That's okay. A good example actually was of what we're saying of just being so addicted to thinking about America as the hero in the whole story. It was a subtle thing, but afterwards, Chris Berman, the big time, I don't know if you know who that is. Yeah, I know that's not your wheelhouse, John Mark, but Chris Berman, he's one of the big faces of NFL announcing and commentary. Okay. But he was kind of summarizing the game like he does every Sunday for the most part. I don't follow the NFL a ton anymore. but was giving a summary of the game, and then at the very end said, and what a fantastic Super Bowl, as it was the first time two African American quarterbacks met against each other in the Super Bowl, which was great. That would have been great if he left it at that, but then followed it up with, and also it happened to fall on Abraham Lincoln's birthday. How about that? Just kind of a throwaway comment, and it was so. A lot of people might not even notice, but it was just so awkward. It was like, what?
That was kind of awkward.
That right there. Is that
that is kind of awkward.
that maybe someone only like me is going to pick up on, but something like that I'm just like, is that sentiment that is so pervasive in talking about any of this stuff? Because it's like we can't let down our guard and just embrace that. Hey, some of these guys, including Abraham Lincoln, I'm not going to dumb down that what he did was not, beyond monumental, amazing for, what he did for freeing and helping end slavery. But that is also to lump him in with some other not so good historical figures. And then also it's sidestepping a lot of problematic views with slavery that had to do with Abraham Lincoln himself as well. Mm-hmm. So, and it was a complete throwaway line. It's like, well, why do we have to mention Abraham Lincoln when we're celebrating two African-American quarterbacks playing in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Like it's everything, doesn't need to hinge on that.
Yeah. It's like, it's not his story.
Yeah.
He doesn't,
that's better put.
Yeah. He doesn't belong in that story. He contributed to part of their story, but it's hard to be a president and not contribute to the story of your country. You know what I mean? So like,
it's very problematic to elevate,
Abraham Lincoln. It wasn't like celebrating one day 2 black quarterbacks will be in the Super Bowl. He was doing what he did in his time, and then we have progressed to this point. So it is awkward that he said that. Yeah.
All right. What else do we got here? I did want to say. I didn't want to glance over because, like we said, we talked about it on here, faith, family, and vocation. So I didn't want to jump over the faith element either with the depriving slaves, depriving oppressed of education by cutting words out of the Bible specifically. Like that was done in the name of Christianity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes it far more egregious. Like they didn't. I think we get too used to thinking just. Even I'm guilty of this, thinking of slavery as this really, really terrible thing. And we talk about it enough on here, but I'm guilty of it too, of thinking, man, that was terrible. Let's live in the now. Even though I think, I'm very well aware of how it still informs today, but I mean, it's beyond reprehensible. Like it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's tough to think about anything worse, to be honest. And at a physical and spiritual level, it is evil. It wasn't just the physical imprisonment, but slaveholders didn't believe that Black people had souls. And then eventually got there,
some did.
But didn't believe they shouldn't be slaves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. And then some did. They recognized Black people being made in the image of God. And then still with their Bible in hands, we're like, all right, go back to the fields. Like, we're still going to beat you. We're still going to enslave you. It's evil. It's evil. And taking God's word, so the Bible, cutting out the Bible, cutting it apart, and twisting it for one's own means is what we see the devil doing in Scripture in the beginning. And then when he's encountered Christ in the Gospels, he twists God's word, right? And that's exactly what these Christian American men did to their slaves. They did the work of the devil. They were not doing the work of Christ, right? So, yeah, that's evil, blatant evil, in your face evil. I appreciate you said that. It feels like we underplay it or don't think about how significant that is. Yeah, because I'm guilty of the same thing. So thanks for saying that.
Last thing before we move into the Bill 999 kind of overview, I did want to say, I think we need to consistently on here, and I think we have been doing that, just kind of call out some of the narratives that are I think concerning and inconsistent, or consistently inconsistent, I guess. So like a lot of this stuff is being done, like this legislation is being done, quote unquote, in the name of protecting kids, like K through 12. Like we can't let our kids be indoctrinated with this woke theology or this woke way of thinking. Like stop woke act. Like that's literally what it got nicknamed. And so in the name of safety for kids, I'll just, and we're not going to go down a rabbit trail here, but I'll say we got to call out some hypocrisy. It's hard to take seriously from the people, the legislators that think that way, or at least say they think that way, because they're the same ones that are well aware of the leading cause of death to those same two kids, K through 12 age, is what? Gun violence. Yeah. It's bullets. But there we're going to pump the brakes, and we're not going to, there's all these reasons why we can't move forward with physically protecting our kids from gun violence. Yeah. So it's just, I'm not pretending to have all the answers, but I do know that is disingenuous and egregiously inconsistent with what, would make sense if that's what they're standing on, safety of children, right? Yeah. All right. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add on that? No, I think that's well said. Okay, so to follow up, the Individual Freedom Act, which I believe got at least temporarily stopped by the federal court. Now, I don't know if it's just a revamp or necessarily the difference between what the act and then now this bill is going to be, but Bill 999 in the state of Florida, legislators are trying to push this through, and without boring everybody reading through all of it, which you can just look up very easily with a quick Google. You don't want to read it? You don't want to read through all of it? Well, okay, let me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. Okay, I was going to say, I made it short, but it's not fun to read. No, keep rolling. Okay, but it's not too long, so you should read it, listeners. Yeah, but sure. The goal is it's taking it a step up, literally, to affecting the college, post-secondary, so college level. So that's more in our wheelhouse, John Mark. And if pushed through, hold on, let me pull something up. There was something I saw that summed it up really well. If pushed through, I think it gets voted on May 5th, if I'm not mistaken, down in Florida. Yeah, okay. If pushed through, MPHC organizations, which are essentially African American Greek life organizations, are all supposed to be removed. All of the Latinx organizations, which I also think, which is Greek life, NMGC organizations on campuses, are to be removed. Jewish studies courses, majors and minors, feminist theory courses, majors and minors, gender studies courses, majors and minors, center and programs for Black students, for Latinx students, Asian AAPI students, and LGBTQ plus students, all removed. Tenured faculty will be eligible for review. Their tenure will be reconsidered, like literally the opposite of what tenure is supposed to be. That's what tenure, right? Tenure's reconsidered. Which, we could talk about tenure and whether or not that should be a thing. But, sure, yeah. But it is a thing, and they're going after it. So that reconsidered right. By the board of trustees, who will be chosen and appointed by the governor. These are just some of the things. Like I assume it's going to affect the secondary level as well, but this is all just even in the college rankings. Yeah. And so that's obviously concerning. I would hope that, again, the federal branch or court that upended the Stop Woke Act could put a stop to it. But all that's really real, and I'll say that it is in Florida, but I just want to encourage our listeners not to live in fear, but also not live in ignorance, and just understand that, especially Virginia people, this stuff, once this stuff, it always starts with one, right? And it very much could spread. Similar things preliminarily are even going on in Virginia right now and in Texas. I think it has happened in Virginia. Tennessee. One was about an AP course, is that right? Yeah, auditing an AP African American course. Yeah. Yeah,
whenever I see
Go
that
ahead.
happening, I'm like, what other history courses are you auditing? you
Right.
know? Yeah.
None.
And then who's auditing it?
Mm-hmm.
Are they doctors in history, right? Or are they just people who, I don't know, politicians, do they have any business auditing a college level history course? That's my question.
And so I did want to point out, like, because I want to communicate the proper level of concern. So I think it's concerning because of how unjust that would be if all this went through, but also want to address the feeling of, well, maybe it's not that big a deal, or maybe it's actually not that big a deal. I've been told it's actually not that big a deal because of it not necessarily affecting people right now, or that this course. So I asked somebody, I asked a couple of people who are teaching in Virginia or the DC area that some of this has been talked about happening. And I've just been like, okay, look, what is actually going on? Is this actually happening? Is this affecting you guys in the classroom right now?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the reactions what I've gotten are, well, no, but the other courses aren't, like other history courses, like you said, aren't being audited. Like this is
so sketchy.
this is, not good. I'll just put it with that kind of language. But there's obviously reason for concern because that's happening. But the reason that the effects aren't necessarily being felt in a real way is because that AP African American course isn't offered very many places, like very many schools. And so
sad.
Directly,
it's like
directly
meaningless.
Right. That's a sad thing. So they're saying like, we're not, so it's not necessarily changing our day to day, these teachers who I'm talking to, but is it concerning because it's being audited and it's preventing it from being pushed forward and from it ever being offered. And so that's where, we might not feel the effects in real time, but in future time we will, because we'll look back and say, wait, there's AP, all these other histories, and where's the AP African American history? Oh yeah, it got audited and never got going. I think that's the danger in that. And that's, I think, the appropriate way to look at it at a concern level.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
It's not as if they're removing yet all of history.
Right.
As far as like teaching about slavery or anything. Yeah. But it's why why choose to be not concerned at all if we're okay with this happening? So that's one thing.
So that's Virginia. Can we go back to talking about Florida a little bit?
Yeah.
Does that bill affect student organizations? Like in that list that you read, does it affect Black fraternities and sororities?
Yes. So that's what I meant to look it up because I forget what the acronym is. I apologize, IOTA people. But so I advise IOTA Phi Theta on Radford's campus. Mm-hmm. They're a D9 organization.
Divine Nine.
Divine Nine, historically Black fraternity. So yes, all of them are listed, and all I can't remember the acronym. MPHC. What is that again?
Wow. So this bill could lead to negatively affecting Black cultural centers on public universities in Florida.
Yeah, they would do away with them.
It's targeting Black communities, or it could have the effect of
communities of color.
Down. Yeah, communities of color. Yeah, so Black communities.
Because there's also Latinx, Asian
Jewish
communities,
Jewish
communities.
So my understanding of the bill that it affects anywhere that is the administration is involved. So anywhere that the Florida government is over, right?
Okay.
But nothing ever stays when you bring something into existence as a law. When a bill passes, the effects never stay exactly where you want them to be. So I don't think it's a leap to say that this would significantly affect communities of color on college campuses. Because like one of the things is the multicultural student union, right? And in those places, diverse students of various identities, especially racial and ethnic identities, come together to meet people who share that have that in common, right? Who share their culture, and that is like life-giving, life-saving space for these Black and brown college students. And this bill seems like it'll go into those spaces and just blow them up, just remove them, stop funding them, fire the department, fire the people, and then there won't be those cultural spaces that are so vital for people of color to thrive, right? And so then it would be reliant on student organizations to do that, but it wouldn't have the same university push behind it. And then those things could be gone after next. So it feels like I don't feel like it's an extreme slippery slope to say this is the beginning of something very bad for communities of color.
Absolutely, which we'll get to that actually more in a second.
Really?
The slippery slope thing, but the NPHC National Panhellenic Council is over the the Black fraternities. Like I said, I have the privilege of advising Iota Phi Theta on campus at Radford. And I've had two of them on this podcast actually. So shout out to them. But what I picked up from them, so we're talking about the uncomfortableness and what organizations like a Black fraternity, like the D9 organizations, what they stand for. And I speak from personal experience, and it's even some of it's recorded because I had them on to do a podcast about this. Starting that fraternity does have obvious historical racial roots and liberating history to it that informs where they're at. But where they're at today that's not necessarily the forefront. At least that's what I gather from them. I even asked them, I think on that episode, I've at least asked them in person, like, so describe more about like what the organization is about. And they're wanting any and everybody to join. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's the whole sentiment of looking at a Black fraternity or like an HBCU and be like, oh, that's divisive. That's, it's a lack of understanding of history. It's, that's not welcoming to white people. It's like, no. It started because it was literally illegal for us to be with white people.
Yeah.
So like,
it was the other way around, right? It was the white fraternities and sororities weren't welcoming.
Same with Black church
people.
And white,
Black church, exactly. White church. Same with Black church. You could go. Yeah. You can come in.
So to take away this stuff because it's making people feel uncomfortable is absolutely ludicrous, man. Like,
it is.
Anyway, talking to my friends on campus, they're in no way out to make all their white friends feel uncomfortable. Like, quite the opposite, really. They're the most open-minded, like, welcoming group of guys, like, on campus. Like, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but that it's just complete lack of understanding of what's actually going on with these organizations. And I mean, the other stuff I listed that they would get rid of if this goes through is just crazy. Like Jewish studies, feminist theory courses, gender studies. So it's, entire demographics and people group, just cutting them out. We're not learning about them anymore. Done.
Yep.
Centers and programs for Black students, Latinx students, Asian AAPI students, that's like the most, like you said, hospitable setting that we're getting rid of for people to feel safe and welcomed.
And I want to make it clear, like, I'm not for everything all of those things teach, right? I'm not for all of those different studies because they're as diverse as people are, right? So I can't possibly agree with every one of them. Some of them I am, some of them I'm like, I don't know if that should be taught. But what I am for is talking through things, right? Thinking critically about issues, not being weak-minded, but seeking wisdom. And I'm just like, how can we cut these things out and expect to have fully formed, mature adults come out of these universities?
Right.
It's ridiculous to me. It's so silly to me that they would think that this is the wise, right thing to do for college students. These are adults that we're trying to train. They're not children; they're adults. So it's wild.
They're adults, which is a great segue. So we've seen this. We just recently, I know, John Mark, we just listened to it, but we saw this kind of play out, and this will kind of bring us home a little bit, and how we wrap this up. But Dr. Jamar Tisby, who we love, we mentioned several times here on the podcast. He's co-host or founder of The Witness, Black Christian Collective. co-host with Tyler Burns on Pass the Mic, but he also has Footnotes, which is his solo podcast. Yeah. He just released an episode this week on, it was an interview with his friend, Dr. Sam, I'm going to say Joeckel. I think that's what it looks like. Joeckel from Palm Beach Atlantic University in, yeah, you guessed it, Florida. Palm Beach Atlantic. And he had him on because he has experienced the ramifications from this type of legislation, not even having gone through yet, because like you said, it hasn't gone through yet, but being attempted to be passed through. Long story short, it's a fantastic interview. Check it out, Dr. Jemar Tisby, Footnotes podcast. It's his latest one. And anyway, long story short, Dr. Sam Joeckel was a tenured professor of 20 years at Palm Beach Atlantic University down in Florida. And these are all his words. Seemingly overnight was fired, but found out because he went into his office and essentially all his stuff had been taken out of his office. He thought he'd been robbed, contacted his dean and whatnot and colleagues, kind of said, what's going on? I've either been robbed or I don't know what else would have been, found out that the dean, and it sounded like maybe some other people were aware of what was going on, didn't respond. So he's just kind of hearing crickets. Again, 20-year, tenure track professor's been there 20 years.
20 years.
At least 20 years. Yeah. Yep. Up and fired. Had to hear it from his own lawyer who they had even contacted.
Yep.
And again, I said it was going to be short, long story short, was fired for teaching a unit on racial justice.
Yeah.
In his classes. A unit that he has been teaching for, in his words, again, years. Not that he, because he maintains that I haven't changed.
A unit,
like nothing,
not a course.
Yeah, a unit, not
a course, just a unit. So like 2 days to a week, like a unit.
Sure.
That's crazy.
And you said these are adults. I agree. We work with college students all the time as well. It sounds like this all got started essentially from a parent that tipped them off that their kid was being exposed to this woke teaching.
Yeah, I don't know anything I don't know much about this school. Did you see if it was a private school?
It is. So I looked it up.
Private Christian school?
Private Christian school. Because at first I heard
that's Palm the only way that I can understand why they could fire a tenured professor after 20 years.
It was reminiscent of the Grove City thing that happened with
Jemar Tisby.
Jamar. Yeah. I shut down my browser, but
that's the thing. Like, I feel like it happens at these private schools where parents don't let their children grow up and gain brains of their own. They still protect what they're exposed to, even at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, right? It's the coddling of this generation and Christians, right? And it's a problem.
Yeah. I don't know Dr. Sam. He sounded like a fantastic guy, but literally he had a lot to say. It was actually sad and I think encouraging to hear like where he was at with his faith and all this stuff. Because he said through all this, it's helped his faith, knowing Jemar Tisby and understanding these people are wrong, and I actually don't regret doing what I did. And he's not saying he was pushing the envelope or anything. He was just willing to teach something on racial justice, and they got him. Literally got him fired. Like there wasn't like a different word for it. No, I mean I got fired. It was that I wasn't getting my contract renewed next year, and that I had to stop teaching immediately. And he's losing health insurance. He said, I just got my last paycheck. My wife and I think on the podcast said, when we get off this call, are going to try and figure out some health insurance stuff.
Yeah.
So that
it's not coverage. The season for professors to find jobs. Like,
right. He's like, my profession is in a terrible spot. He's like, who knows what I'll do, but I love that he, absolutely leaned into, but it was the right thing to do. To not back up, but to touch on the private Christian school thing at the college level. So I think that does inform what we're talking about personally, because I think on one end, when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, it's just happening at the private school level, not a big deal, which would not be accurate because, like I said, it starts with one. And as we just read about Bill 999, it clearly is being targeted to be the public universities as well.
Right.
I'll be honest. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't actually think that is. I don't think that's going to happen. It's just extremely concerning that it's a real possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But from just a micro lens, especially let's bring our listeners in. Faith, family, and vocation. We talk about how all these are intersected. Many of you listening are Christians. I think you'll agree, John Mark. I think it is concerning on this level that too often Christians and Christian organizations are the ones leading the way for these things happening. Mm-hmm. So on another level, I think it's just deeply concerning because I'm looking at this as like, well, and one thing from a Christian perspective, this is hurting all of us. Because to what it's saying to not say non-Christians is, of course the Christians are getting behind this censorship and depriving people from being open-minded and learning about people outside mainstream majority culture, which again is running for me too parallel to history of depriving communities of color, marginalized communities of proper education. I think that's just an egregiously terrible thing. I think everyone could agree with that if we articulate it right, like in that way of what is actually happening.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I think of the verse that says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. And as Christians in America, so speaking to Christians in America here, we have a legacy of sin, of racism that has come down. And when I teach about this, I teach that for anyone who has benefited from America in any way, if you're going to take the good from America, then you have a responsibility to kind of heal some of the wrongs in the past. So it's not that you're guilty of the sin of whoever owned slaves, whoever did the racism, like you're not guilty of that. But if you benefited from it or you benefit from any way, and all of American society, culture, wealth is bound up in this racist act of owning slaves and oppressing people of color. Anyone who benefits from that has some amount of responsibility to right that wrong, right? And it starts with just admitting it, right? Like, what do we have to lose by saying racism is bad and it has effects that continue into today, right? And effects that we should do our best to fix, right? What do we have to lose by just admitting that? I don't have an answer to that question, but I'm curious what we have to lose. But I think that's where it starts, especially for believers. If we can get to the point where we can look at what has happened, history, true history in the face, all full evil shining in our face, if we can look at it and say, God, help us, this is what we're coming from, then God will help us, right? And we will move forward. That's what I believe. That's the message to Christians who are listening. We got to acknowledge the truth of history and ask for God to move through us and to help us right those wrongs.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
One thing, I don't know where you're going after this, but about history and teaching it. And if we go to a point where the truth of what has happened in America's past is not remembered or not taught about publicly, it will be remembered by those who come from the communities that were oppressed and have been hurt the most, right? So the truth is going to continue through those communities. I was reading this book called, it's called The Deep. Let me see who it's by. It's called The Deep. I was listening to it. So David Diggs of Hamilton reads it. And I think he had a part in writing it. But it's about Mer people.
I don't know how have I not heard about that? Nice deep cut there.
I don't know. It's about Mer people who are descendant of slaves that were tossed overboard in the Middle Passage. So it's a sci-fi, history, and they have one person who remembers the history of their people, underwater. I just think it's a beautiful picture of how we pass the truth along generation to generation, even when those in power would have it silenced, would have it not remembered, would have it squashed. I think it's beautiful. Another book like that is there's a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and then there's a more recent book called The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee. And The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee is written by Native American perspective, and it carries the history of the hardness, but also some of their own agency and how they fought against racism and oppression. So people will remember the true history. It'll still be remembered. But we got to fight hard to help it be remembered publicly and supported by our country. I feel like this is a fight for the soul of our nation. If we really believe in truth and justice, then we have got to continue to have these conversations and say, Bill 999 is not good. Like bills like that, things that are going after auditing history courses, that's not good. We need to speak the truth, pursue the truth, and we need to talk against blocking sharing uncomfortable historical facts. So,
absolutely,
yeah.
To help us wrap up, I was going to say this. I think we need to be careful to not throw around the word indoctrination so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, I even Googled up the basic definition. So the process of teaching a person or group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. And I think that word indoctrination that I hear is often thrown around by white Christians who are fearful of wokeness or fearful of these kinds of things that we're talking about. Not all, but that's just, I'm calling it like it is. That's just what, and the legislators and government officials who are putting forth this stuff. And I just think it goes beyond, or actually it doesn't really touch the nuance of different sets of beliefs or what you think about someone else's beliefs. I'm just talking about being consistent. So like what I'm saying is, I don't think that Christians would feel this way if it was our culture being indoctrinated. You know what I mean? So like, I think too often what we're saying is we just want everyone to be indoctrinated with Christianity and our beliefs. And I don't think that's a Christian thing. I think that's not how we are instructed to go about it. Regardless of how you feel, I don't think that's how we're instructed as Christians to share our Christianity and share the gospel.
Yeah.
That might be just me. I think that's literally the opposite in a lot of ways of the gospel, because if we're fine with making it, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, are you saying we shouldn't force people to become Christian? Like, we shouldn't indoctrinate people with Christianity. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It's not to make it a law. Is not that. I don't think that's what Jesus is about or was about. Yeah. And I think we know that. So I think it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous for most of us to say we need to be afraid of our kids being indoctrinated with woke theology or any other belief that's counter to Christianity in the public school. So we need to make sure none of this happens and that they just end up having a completely homogenous education, and then we'll be good. I think that's just can be a dangerous way to look at stuff and can kind of prevent you from loving your neighbor and understanding what it looks like to just navigate the world. Like you said, John Mark, I don't agree with every single thing that would be removed from some of these things, but I do completely disagree with the reasoning.
Yeah.
And
it's the reason.
I just think many Christians who are listening and not listening, like, I think that we got to be honest. We would think differently if we didn't feel like our religion or way of life was the one being attacked. And so I think throwing around the word indoctrination is a little bit, we got to look at it outside our own perspective and understand what we're asking. So I err on the side of it's not saying I'm very involved. My wife and I are very involved with what our kids are learning and understanding what's going on. And if there's a problem, we address it with the teachers or administration. Like we've literally been doing that this year, and we only have a first grader. But I have a problem this is my personal view with all the ridicule teachers take. And I think like my wife and I can never homeschool. Like we're just not wired like that. Hats off to everyone that can do that. At the same time,
I was homeschooled, so I can say this. It takes a special kind of crazy.
Yes, absolutely. At the same time, I think I think our culture can too easily think that we can replace professionals. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's easier said than to, like you said, it takes a special type of crazy type of person. Like, I think it's sometimes too easily usurping people who are qualified to do a really excellent job and just have terrible support. Nowadays. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox with the teaching thing, but my personal view is I think makes sense for if your kids are in public school, to be exposed to different worldviews, different people. And then it's up to, the household to talk through those things and parent and kind of shepherd you through those things. That's a simplistic way to put it for now. But I just, that's something that's been bothering me a little bit, the throwing out the word indoctrination and fear mongering of, our kids are going to learn about LGBTQ community or the history of slavery. And all these things. I'm just like, we can think what we want. We're talking about other human beings. And it's a little bit, it's too, it makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah, we have to, in our homes, teach our kids how to think critically about information that they're taught, and also how to love people who have different worldviews, are living a different life, coming from a different home style, different family. Like, how do you love and care for people who are culturally different from you? That starts in the home, at the dinner table or breakfast table, whatever meal table you're having together. It's, that's where it starts. We have to teach our children how to face the world. And it doesn't happen if you're a mom of a 19-year-old college student at a private Christian school calling in being like, I don't like what my son was taught. Like, how embarrassing is it for that kid? Like, we didn't even talk about that. How embarrassing is it that his mom is like sitting next to him in class, listening to what he's saying? So we have to do better than that mom. We have to do better.
Yeah.
I assume it was a mom. Could have been a dad. Sorry to the moms out there. It could have been a dad.
Yeah, nice catch there. Yeah. All right, we gotta go. We came back with we came out of the gate hot with a
long one.
In the middle of my paternity leave. It was. Yeah, I had to write some notes down because I was like, I'll go off on too many tangents. I still did, but listeners, trust me, I saved you by writing stuff down ahead of time.
Yeah. So our homework now is to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes, absolutely. We'll come back with a little more lighthearted one.
I'm down to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, John Mark, I got a docket of people ready to come on with a bunch of different stuff, but we got to take some pauses to do some of the fun stuff like that.
Yeah, let's line them up.
Absolutely. John Mark, thanks for catching up, potting with me. Listeners, as always, thank you so much for listening and valuing what we have to say about these topics. Again, we would love to hear from you. I didn't even give our Patreon a shout out. Join our Patreon. Most of you guys heard about it by now. It's well on its way. I'm really happy with the amount of money we've already raised, and we're on our way to providing some lucky student with some money for their textbooks, either to reimburse this past semester or depending if we can get some more of y'all to join. Giving some more to students or a student. I'd love for it to be multiple students, but in the fall for some textbooks for first gen students of color. So check out our Patreon. We try and put out the whole full video of each of these episodes so you can see our lovely faces. on the Patreon page and try and give you a few more updates here and there as well. So yeah, please check out our Patreon. As always, the music you're listening to was done by our friend Dylan Dent, and our artwork was done by Ashley Bush. And we will see you all next time.
See ya.
The nightmare might scare you no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.